features of pre-PG that I really like is the question bank is really light. You don't need to spend a lot of mental strength on it. So even in one go, I used to complete 500, 600 questions at a time on this Q bank, whereas on other app, it felt a bit heavy to me. The explanations were so loaded with information that you couldn't do a lot of questions at a stretch. Another feature that's awesome is the revision thing. So guided revision, deep revision, they're all excellent tools that, for example, once you solve the question, there's a 50% chance that you'll remember it and you might not. So the revision, if you keep on revising the same question twice, thrice, the more the number of times you revise, definitely you'll remember it more. One more thing I liked about pre-PG was the study circle feature. I was also part of a study circle. I had a few group of good people with me. So it adds a level of competition to your game. So you keep competing in daily tests, weekly tests, everything. So it keeps you up to mark. So I constantly kept checking the prep DNA. It was like an obsession of mine. So I think check it daily. Whatever subjects I have already completed preparing, like for the first time, I used to create build workouts. There's a feature on pre-PG where we can build our own workouts, selecting the subjects. So I used to keep selecting the subjects which I've already covered once.
Dr. Adarsh, welcome so much here. I just wanted to start by checking with you how you're doing and how are you feeling after getting such a wonderful rank, and also tell us your rank in INICET.
Hi sir, of course I'm feeling well. I got a rank of 28 in this November NESET exam. And
great.
Of course I'm happy about it.
You're happy about it, right? Yeah, it's a great rank, and of course these ranks don't come easy. So we're going to talk a little bit more about your customer or your overall journey and how did you prepare, etc. And the objective, as you know, we were just talking just before this call, is to help others. If somebody's coming to ask you for help, like Dr. Adarsh, please help me with what advice would you give me? That's what we want to help them out. So, but before that, let's get started. Tell me, why did you choose to become a doctor, and why are you pursuing the PhD, the PG side?
Okay, so both of my parents were doctors, and so was my brother. So it was kind of a set path for me. I never really considered any other branch, to be fair. And of course, I enjoyed the topic as well. That's why I went into this line, and I would like to continue in this line as well after MBBS.
Great. And it's what specialties are your parents and brother?
My father's a pediatrician, mom's a gynecologist, and brother's an anesthesiologist.
Oh, great. So older brother, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Great. So you are the baby of the family.
Yeah.
They must be all super excited about
yeah,
this.
They are. They didn't expect it, to be frank, but yeah.
Oh, okay. Low expectations is always a good thing.
Yeah, it's always nice.
Did you expect it?
I did towards the end of my preparation. Yes, I did.
Great. So, tell us about your preparation journey. Like when did you start? How did you start? And just tell us your story.
Okay. So I completed my MBBS internship on 31st December 2021. So I began preparing like specifically for PG entrances after 10 days around that. So January this year. The first exam I gave seriously was, I think, the May INI, in which I got a rank of around 1.5K. It was an average rank, but not good
rank.
enough. Yeah. But in this exam, that rank won't get you much seats. That was my problem. So what I did was, throughout, I had around 4 months for preparing before that exam.
Mm-hmm.
So it was definitely not enough for completing everything and revising it over and over again. But I tried to cram in as much as I could within those 4 months. So I covered all subjects. So some subjects I did from major source, and some I just looked through the important topics, and I ensured that most of the subjects I covered multiple times. So I thought that was more important than uh, concentrating more on covering the breadth of the subject. And
Tell us more about that. Like, give us a few more specifics on that point.
okay, uh, you need to cover all the subjects. You can't afford to miss any subject, especially for an exam like INI, where even the minor subjects hold a pretty sizable weightage. And especially for INI, I would say concentrate on first and second year subjects. Those are the base of your entire medical education. I think second year subjects will help you crack most of the questions in medicine as well, in final year subjects as well. For NEET, I think a more weightage is placed on clinical subjects, but even then, you need to have a strong base in first and second year subjects. For me personally, I during my MBBS, I concentrated well in class during the final years of my preparation of my MBBS. So I had a decent base in the clinical subjects. However, towards the beginning of MBBS, I wasn't as uh, attentive in class, so I had a weak base. So I concentrated on the first and second year subjects in the beginning of my preparation. And as you'll see, as you strengthen your base, your performance will keep on increasing. When I started in January, the average number of correct questions I used to get out of 200 was around 110, 120. It slowly, you just need to ensure that it keeps on increasing. You don't necessarily need to compete with others. Just keep competing with yourself and see that the graph is on the upslope.
Well, first of all, I should tell you, like, something that I noticed in your overall prep DNA in pre-PG, that your foundational first, second year subjects were particularly strong. They are, and I have, after years of seeing those graphs for so many toppers, I've come to recognize, like, what is the sign of who will do well. And we can look a little bit later, a little bit more into it. But do continue on the thought of subjects in particular. You mentioned that there were some subjects that you decided that, okay, let me just drill deeper. Was that basically the foundational first, second year subjects, or something in clinical too?
Yeah, I usually refer to the previous year questions on which subjects to concentrate on. So I found what my personal interpretation was that, especially in first year, anatomy is a crucial subject because it forms the base of surgery as well. And biochem is a subject that.
Especially the, sorry to interject this, especially the point that anatomy is the kind that in INICET, they combine it with a clinical piece, and then they ask those questions, right? Sorry, but you were saying something about biochemistry, which I think was your strongest, by the way. Yeah, go ahead.
Biochem is a subject that you have to read over and over again and practice questions. Without that, you just can't. It's not a subject where you can think and answer something. It is something that you have to know most of the times. And usually they correlate clinically, so it's fine. Like the questions, you can guess what topics at least they're going to focus on. But you'll need to read that. It's not a subject which can link with other subjects and you can answer. Physiology was one of my favorite subjects during my UG times, and it's a very important subject as far as INI goes. Maybe NEET doesn't have that much of a focus, but INI uses a lot of graphs, especially, and those are like interesting questions. You can try and work them out during the exam as well, even if you don't have an idea before the exam. So that's something I liked. And second year, I think, is the most crucial part. Pathology and pharmacology are, I think they'll get you around 40 to 50 questions, maybe, even if not directly, indirectly, something or the other will be borrowed from patho and pharma. Microbiology, again, is a standalone subject. You can't club that with anything. That has to be studied on its own. And it's very volatile, so you'll have to make tables, charts, whatever helps you remember. FMT was, again, one of my favorite subjects.
Right.
It's a really interesting subject. And that was because I studied it well during my UG time. I didn't need to focus much. But of course, revisions are always important. So as long as you have a source where you have like concised your entire preparation. So keep referring to the same source. For me, at least, there happens a spatial memory. I have a good spatial memory, so wherever I have written it down on a copy, so I'll remember most of the stuff where and what I've written. So that helps me a lot.
You use handwritten notes.
I tried to, like, I couldn't make notes, of course, in such a short span of my time, but whatever topics I felt were volatile, I used to note them down in a copy and I used to refer to them repeatedly. So that formed a good memory for me.
Great. So, it'll be good to see a little bit of your metrics and your performances. Like as I said, there were markers of being really good. Let's see that and then come back to some more specific of the preparation. Okay, I'll share my screen for a moment. Can you see this?
Yeah.
All right. So, first of all, this is your prep DNA. I'm sure you saw this on pre-PG. There's so many markers of what you were saying here, right? Like how good you are in biochemistry. By the way, I've seen that people who do well, particularly well in biochemistry and who make an effort there, you can see it in the fundamentals. Like this whole green thing means that across all topics, you are into the 90th percentile. And people are good in the 90th percentile overall, but this is at the topic level, which is very, very unique. And generally, this is a sign of it's a very strong subject. And in particularly in biochemistry, I've seen it lies way to the left for most people because it's a weakness. And in your case, it's a strength. So I just wanted to call that out. Anatomy being way to the right, you said you like forensic, and then pathology being at where it is, and pharmacology. These two are the foundational pieces that make you strong, and especially the ones that are combined with clinical. And all this, but that's the beauty of where you have all of this is great. The only thing is physiology is a little to the left. So this pretty much shows that there are some things over here that you were still trying to improve on, but overall this is super powerful. And you attempted like a good number on pre-PG too. I'm sure you must be using other sources too, but 12,000 plus almost 13,000 questions is a lot, and a good number of revisions too, like close to 4,000 revisions. I double clicked into biochemistry in particular, and I could see the strong performance over here. Like it's green throughout. You can see molecular genetics. There are, of course, subtopics there where you're particularly strong. Across the board, this is very strong performance. Then I double-clicked particularly into molecular genetics, and I saw that even yellow, like 70th percentile plus, is very, very strong, right? Like across the board, it's strong performance. Anyway, I won't bore you too much with what you already know, but I just wanted to call out, like this is the whole idea of pre-PG. You can drill deeper into specific topics, subtopics, and see what's your strength and weakness. And no area of concern here. Of course, you would start preparing from this side. The reason of structure of DNA is like there's some subtopic over there that you might not have covered well, but that's about it. But this is the most impressive part in my mind. In the timing, when did you start on pre-PG?
Okay, I think around, I had an account beforehand, but I wasn't using it regularly. I think I started using it regularly around Jan.
Around Jan, right? That's what I think this is Jan time frame to now. This jump up almost to the 75 readiness index. It shows that your fundamentals were clear already. Like that, it's a sign that you were good, and maybe it could be coming out of the fact that your clinical pieces were strong, right? But from here, this steady improvement going all the way up to 97, this is the sign that we always look at, that there is no question that you would do well. Like we would have guessed. It's very hard to guess the exact number, right? Like, but it is possible to guess that you'll be in the top 100 kind of level. So it was very impressive. Anyway, I just it's very nice to see when people use the product the way we have designed it to be used. So, but with that, tell us about your journey of like the different tools you used, or the different books or apps that you used, or any coaching if you took any.
Okay, I'll start off with pre-PG, how I used it. So it's an excellent tool as a question bank. So essentially what you need to do is, what I used to do is, when I complete, what usually happens during my preparation is, when I complete a subject, it'll be one of my strong subjects in whatever tests I give. But gradually you'll begin to forget, and after 1 month it'll come back to a mid-level subject. So what I used to do is, whatever subjects I've already completed preparing, like for the first time, I used to create build workouts. There's a feature on pre-PG where you can build our own workouts, selecting the subjects. So I used to keep selecting the subjects which I've already covered once. So at least you'll be in touch with the subject. You won't forget everything about the subject, and just ensure that that subject doesn't slip back down to your weakness. And it will definitely decrease as long as you progress with time, but just ensure that it's on the up slope and not on the down slope. And other features of pre-PG that I really like is the question bank is really light. You don't need to spend a lot of mental strength on it. So even in one go, I used to complete 500, 600 questions at a time on this Q bank, whereas on other app, it felt a bit heavy to me. The explanations were so loaded with information that you couldn't do a lot of questions at a stretch. So pre-PG I really like due to that. Another feature that's awesome is the revision thing. So guided revision, deep revision, they're all excellent tools that, for example, once you solve the question, there's a 50% chance that you'll remember it, and you might not. So the revision, if you keep on revising the same question twice, thrice, the more the number of times you revise, definitely you'll remember it more. One more thing I liked about pre-PG was the study circle feature. So during my preparation, I was lucky I had my undergraduate friends. So I used to discuss with them, like not even on a daily, on an hourly basis almost. Like my WhatsApp chat is filled with questions. They'd keep asking me questions, I'd keep asking them questions. That helps immensely. Like when someone else asks you a question and you answer it, it stays with you for a much longer time than if you just read it yourself. At least that's how it is for me. So that helped a lot. I was also part of a study circle. I had a few group of good people with me. So it adds a level of competition to your game. So you keep competing in daily tests, weekly tests, everything. So it keeps you up to mark.
There are various very interesting things you mentioned there. So we can go one after the other, right? But starting with the study circle one, did others in your study circle do well too?
This was, I think, the first serious attempt. So they got decent ranks, around 1000 ranks over the board. So around 1K, 1.5K to other people in the study circle.
It must have been very inspiring for them too.
Yeah, definitely.
Have you
for me as well.
That's great. Yeah, the whole idea of study circle was based on Gautam and I, the co-founders here. We we are not doctors. We went to IIT Bombay, and we were in the same hostel, hostel 5 actually. So we used to sit together and study. And we just realized that your point that you said, Dr. Adarsh, that if you actually answer somebody's question, there's this saying in Sanskrit, right? Like that if you actually explain it to someone else, that's when you've gained mastery. And that's when you remember the best. So that's the beauty of it. And then we realized that now it's all gone online. And then there was this healthy competition between us, right? Like we wanted each other to do well, but we wanted to do well together. But, we always had but we wanted to do better than the other guy in the test, while hoping that they also do well, right? So those are the things we try to simulate in it. And and have hopefully kept it at a very simple feature, which simulates some of these competitive, still collaborative kind of culture. How many other people did you have in the study circle?
I think there are a total of 5 or 6 people, like
Okay.
including me, 6. Yeah.
Okay, and did others take tests regularly too?
Yeah, they did.
Okay, good. That's great. It's always good to know when people use the feature like the way it was designed, as I said. Tell me more, like, one of the things that I really like to drill deeper on is looking into, we spend a lot of time on our analytics and telling whether people are strong or weak, and what's your strength, what's your weakness. Did you utilize those features?
Yeah, I forgot to mention the prep DNA part. So as I said, I believed in competing with myself more. So
The
I
best
just
way to
wanted to
compete.
ensure, yeah,
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure that my preparation never reaches a plateau, or it will eventually reach a plateau. As long as it doesn't slip down, it's fine. So I constantly kept checking the prep DNA. It was like an obsession of mine. So I think check it daily or something. And I was worried when it was starting to, the slope was starting to decrease, because the initial rise was very fast and then it began to grow slow. But of course, that is expected.
Yeah.
But I used to check it diligently, and apart from that, I used to go to the subtopics and check out what my weaknesses were. And I used to, if I thought, sorry, if I thought that's a topic I needed to work on, I used to focus on that a bit.
That's great. That's the perfect way to use it. That's really great. And another interesting thing that I heard from you, which, by the way, people don't do too much. First of all, revision. You used like the guided revision. You used the daily revision, or deep revision features. The deep revision feature gives you questions similar to the mistakes you have made. So those are great. But you also did this special thing of like, hey, I don't want to lose touch of things that I've already studied, and created those workouts and studied them. It's such a beautiful technique. And like whenever we hear these things, we try to apply them. We'll think about how to apply those so that people can start doing it almost automatically, right? Our revision features try to simulate that, but whenever we hear these things, we try to you try to create features that will create that. One of the things that I always like to ask is, this is a hard journey, right? Like especially nearly everyone, as you said, like there's no one who's like first attempt, and there are few people, but I think they're just very rare. You generally attempt once, knowing that okay, you're going to do it again, and through the thing there is there's always this question of self-doubt, or there is doubts from others, right? So how did you deal with that? Or did you first of all, did you ever have self-doubt?
Of course, I think everyone goes through that during the preparation phase.
Yeah.
Actually, my 0th attempt, as I call it, that happened during my internship. Our internship ends on December 31st. So I gave my first exam in November 2021. I got a rank of around 12,000 in that. So, but that didn't really matter because I didn't even start preparing.
Yes.
So about the self-doubt thing, that I think there's no student who can say they have never gone through self-doubt throughout their preparation. But what helps during those times, for me at least, is having friends you can talk to, having a family who's supportive of your journey, and the confidence booster for me was, of course, the increase in graph, and the fact that everyone goes through this. So you talk to people, you know that no matter how much people have studied, they'll always go through that feeling of self-doubt. Exceptions will always be there, but I think it's a generalizable thing to say.
One question you will not be able to answer, but I'll tell you, this is it is unfortunate that there are people whose graph plateaus too early. So, you saw yourself going up, and then, you went up, then it started making an asymptote, but your asymptote was closer to like getting to 100, like 97, right? The slope going down is expected, but when the slope goes down and it flattens to in like, there are people when the flat curve is in the 70s, and that is really disappointing. Unfortunately, you cannot answer that question because you've not faced that. But it's I should mention, or maybe you have advice over there, but one thing I've mentioned that I've seen people come out of that, and generally it comes out of what you had said earlier, that you recognize that in the early years, you did not focus as much on the studies, so those were the weaker subjects. Just recognizing that and studying it pulls you out of it. What I've seen at that stage is like people just keep going without correcting their mistakes or checking their revision or revising regularly. So practicing without revising or improve, it's not no improvement at all, right? Almost obvious, but if you have any thoughts on that, I would love to hear that.
Well, yeah, I think figuring out your strengths and weaknesses is one of the most important part in prep. Also, you need to get in the examiner's mind as well and think about the kind of questions they like to set. So if you concentrate on previous year questions and figure out what topics are their favorite and what they're asking on those topics, if you concentrate on those, like select topics and pick your weak points, what you're getting repeatedly wrong. And I think there are two kinds of mistakes you can make. Either you don't know the concept well at all. So for that, you'll need to revise the topic once more from your primary source of preparation, or you make mistakes which are avoidable. So you know the thing, but during attempting the question or during the exam, you mess up. So those second kind of mistakes you can't really avoid. You can just try and minimize them based on the number of practice sessions you do. Because even during the main exam, I have made mistakes I would never make in a non-exam situation. The exam day is a whole other ball game, and everyone makes those kind of mistakes. Like you won't ever expect to make the mistake on a normal day, but on the day of the exam, it happens. But the thing you have to remember is everyone makes those mistakes, no matter what their rank is, they will make those mistakes. So you can try and minimize them as much as possible and ensure that you don't mess up on you don't miss out on anything because of silly mistakes.
Yeah.
As much as you can.
That it totally, it's so, very first principles, almost when you speak it, it makes sense. Like, of course, that's the way to do it. And, but it is still very, it's very hard to practice these things. And I recognize also just the point of doing practice, right? Like as much practice as possible in these cases. The thing that I wanted to emphasize in your case, right? Like you practiced, but you also knew where the weakness was. I'm sure you went back to the books, or you did the prep and then came back and that moved your graph up. That's something very obvious that people miss out on, that okay, recognize your thing and just try to improve there, right? Like there are people who really lack fundamentals, and it's obvious, right? Like it's a long journey. You doctors have the longest journey, like always with the books, right? So it's expected that part of the journey you might have taken it easy, but the test time is for you to pick it up. So that's great. Tell me about the last few days, right? Like there's the factor of the last couple of weeks, or give me a time frame and if there's any advice over there.
So I'll talk about my last week. So for the May INI which I appeared, I was revising the subjects during the last week because I had completed the previous year questions beforehand only. So around 10-15 years earlier, I had started and completed the PYQ. So this time what I did was I kept on studying and revising till before the last week. And in the last week, I didn't amass new information or something. I just stuck to PYQs and I decreased my study hours a bit so that I don't get overstressed or anything. In fact, I think the day before the exam, I was preparing a quiz. I love quizzing, so it was a general quiz. So anything to take my mind off things. So actually, it depends on the person. This is what works for me. I don't like to get overstressed immediately before the exam, so I indulge in stress-busting activities. But some people might do well if they concentrate more during those last few days of the exam. It all depends on how you deal with stress and all. So I think dealing with stress is one of the most important aspects during the exam time. Regardless of prep, I think if you can't handle stress properly on the day of the exam, it will push your rank down a bit. I think the last 100 ranks or even 500 ranks will be decided on the day of the exam, how you play on the day of the exam. Yeah. Regardless of how much you have prepped.
I've seen that so often. In fact, I was telling you that I can usually predict ranks based on prep DNA. I failed miserably on it at times. That people I expect they'll do very well. And when I see the rank, I'm not still get good rank, but like I was expecting more, right? Like how did you not get a good rank? And then they usually say one of the things that you are saying, right? Like, oh, at the time I panicked, or at the time I got stressed about something, or did not get enough sleep in the last week. So all of those things add up. I mean, again, as doctors, you understand all that, but sometimes the simple things matter. And you're right about, different things for different people, right? If you have not studied hard enough, sometimes you feel that you can work very hard at the end and it will work, but it's so immense. I think it's better to keep your mind mind calm at the end rather than try to cram, right? But again, your opinion, my opinion, different things work for different people. Is there anything, Dr. Adarsh, that you would say that we've not covered as we've discussed that you would like to tell others? You have the opportunity to have a bunch of people gain from your insights.
I've heard a lot of people debating about where their source of main preparation should be from. So yeah. I was thankfully having subscription to multiple apps. So not personal subscription, but thankfully I had friends who had. So I used multiple apps, but one thing I ensured is I never used multiple apps for the same subject. So I used to fix apps per subject depending on whatever teaching I liked. So I stuck to one source mainly because the repetition factor becomes much more important in that case. So if you keep revising the same information from the same source, I feel that you can retain it better than if you keep revising different sources. Even if it's the same information given in a different way, it is harder to remember if it's from a different source. So, and one thing I'd like to say is that I think any resource you take, it is enough for preparing for any PG entrance you can. That's why they've made the resource. But there always is a fear of missing out. So people might try and take as many resources as they can, but that might lead you to waste your time because you're just repeating stuff and it's not a very good use of time, in my opinion, of course. And one more thing, the rapid revision features, videos that a lot of institutes have come up with, I think those are exceptional. Like if you have a decent base in all the subjects, you can watch them. I think exclusively I watched rapid revision for a few subjects and it worked for me because I had a decent base. I could manage with that much information. And one more thing I've seen a lot of people do is, yeah, medicine is a subject which a lot of people spend a lot of time on. But I think that is something which is not very productive, because once you have done other subjects, patho and pharma, medicine, most part of medicine is covered. There are few topics that are specific to medicine, which you have to do for medicine. Cardiology, for example, is almost exclusive to medicine, and a few other topics, but most of it will be covered some way or the other in patho and pharma as well. So you can deal with medicine. Around 60 to 70% of the questions I feel that can be done without covering exclusive medicine itself. So I never put much of an emphasis on medicine, and it did work out decently in the end. And one thing that surprised me this INI is there was a decreased focus on obs and gynae. That usually forms the major chunk of the question, whatever entrance you give, be it NEET, be it INI. But this exam, I think, had very few questions from it. This time, I think there was an increased number of questions from patho, especially. So you can never predict what they'll put in a particular edition of the exam, but that's why you should cover all the subjects at least. Never skip out on a subject.
That's very, very good advice. And by the way, that the medicine advice I've heard from several good toppers, like especially the point the pathology, for example. Every time I look at pathology as a subject in INICET, I am surprised at, like, should I call this? There's so many questions that ends up being a pathology question. It might not be just a pathology question, but it's the problem can be solved by being good at pathology, which, by the way, my father was a pathologist, so so I always could I could see him teaching pathology. He used to teach at FMGE, so I could always sense that. But I mean, I'm not a doctor, but I could, when we analyze questions and tests, like at the end of each, like the similarities between the questions that come in the test and what's there in our question bank, that's when I noticed that that point, that it's a medicine question, the test creator might call it a medicine question, but it's actually a pathology question. So just stuff like that. These little things matter, because if you spend the first subject you do is medicine, then you've gone into a deep hole and destroyed your time. Right?
Ever expanding subject. You can't really cover it 100% ever.
Yeah. And it's more of a practice thing. Like, that is the kind of stuff you should do a ton of clinical practice questions, right? This is all such great advice, Doctor. I think we can keep going on and on forever. I'm sure. So when are you starting? First of all, which specialty are you going to go for?
I'm probably going for radiology.
Great. But
the number of seats this session are a little less, so I'll see if I get it or not.
All right, that's great. Yeah, radiology is always everyone's favorite. So, good luck with that. I'm sure, like, you've got a great rank, and I hope you get it. And if you need, we always stay in touch. And if you need anything from our side, please let us know. Congratulations again. Continue to serve society like doctors always do.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.